In just a few days, Namibians will head to the polls for the Presidential and National Assembly elections. Beg your pardon, in just a few days, Namibians will head to the polls for the Presidential and National Assembly elections, a key moment for our democracy. Elections are a time for lively debates and sharing ideas, but they can also bring out divisions and intolerance. And tonight we are talking about something that matters to all of us, which is promoting tolerance in elections, building a culture of respect and inclusion in political campaigns. I'm Jonas Mbambo with your sign language interpreter for tonight, Peter Mbwale. Very warm welcome to Situation Critical. For tonight's discussion, I have two very special guests. I have Armando Peters, a dedicated youth activist pushing for more inclusivity in politics and as far as the youth is concerned. And we also have Dr. Ellison Shirera, a social analyst who will help us explore how society, culture, and governance connect. Very good evening to you, gentlemen, and thank you so much for making time to join us for Situation Critical.
Thank you ever so much, Jonas, for having me.
Thank you so much. That's my line, actually. But I appreciate it. I want to start off with you. As someone who is deeply involved in youth activism, how do you think young people can lead the way in promoting tolerance and respect during this time of elections? And perhaps maybe just give us your understanding of what it means to be tolerant.
Thank you ever so much, Jonas, for the question too. I think I must on the onset say that this is a very critical time for our country. It is indeed a critical time in the essence that I'm saying that it is all eyes on Namibia. It is our conduct. What do we portray to the international community? What do we portray in terms of what the standard that we have put on the peace and harmony that we have in this country? And again, bringing it back to your question, Jonas, I think that Namibian young people over the years have become politically woke and they have become politically radical. And I think there's a misconception between political radicalness and political participation amongst young people. I think we as Namibian youth are more radical in terms of politics, that we are not really participating in politics. Why do I say this, Jonas? It is very crucial that at a time like this, just a few days before elections, we are having a discussion around tolerance, political tolerance during election season, because right now we are seeing a lot of name calling on social media. We are seeing who's calling who incapable. We are seeing young people throwing stones to other young people because of the political parties that they choose to stand with. But that is not political participation. Jonas, that is what we call instigating political hostility in a country and at such a critical time. So I think we as young people have misconceptualized political participation for instigating political hostility in this country. So I think it is very crucial that we unpack this discussion right now and say, what is political tolerance and why is it needed at a time like this? We need to understand, Jonas, and we all need to understand as a country that our democracy is fragile at a time like this, that the country is fragile.
All right, Armando, we still have a lot of time, so don't exhaust all your points. Dr. Shirera, when we talk about tolerance, especially in an election context, what does it truly mean and why is it essential for a healthy democracy? And Namibia has been very fortunate to have to have enjoyed peace since independence. Yes, we have our shortcomings here and there, but in the eyes of the international community, we have become that one, not only just African country, but one country in the world that is seen as a beacon of hope and as far as democracy is concerned. But talk to us about tolerance. What exactly, if you were to break it down for the men on the street, what is tolerance?
Thanks, Jonas, for having me. Good evening to the viewers. And I must say first that I really admire the energy of the activist.
Yeah. Very active.
It comes with it to the studio. So in layman's language, I think tolerance is about first respect and accepting views that are different from those that you hold. So that's as simple as it is. And I think in democratic dispensation, one thing that should happen is we should allow others to air their views in as much as we do not agree with them. So, and I personally always say that, I will defend your right to say whatever it is that you want to say, notwithstanding how mistaken you can be. So I think that's what it is, really, at the very basic level. And And I think when it comes to elections, the situation becomes critical, as
indeed.
the name of your show suggests.
Yeah. With a K.
So,
Not the C.
so because I think tolerance is ipso facto part of democratic life. But during elections, it becomes incredibly important. So the throwing of stones that my brother here was alluding to are some of the things that, produce outcomes that would have
Detrimental.
yeah, that will be detrimental to the peace and the order in the country. So yeah.
Now, Armando, we have this monster in the form of social media that many of us are on. The young people are very active on it, and especially now during the time of elections. And you did touch on a bit as to the language that's being used on social media during this time of elections. I don't know, and I've mentioned it before, where I said, there's something about election campaigns that brings out our ugly side. All of a sudden, we're seeing all the shortcomings in each other because of our political beliefs. But from a young person's perspective, how would you gauge the language that you have been, seeing on social media, and as far as the young people are concerned in expressing their views, and if it's in a negative light, where are they getting this from?
Yes, I think, thank you very much, Jonas. Before I elaborate more on the question, I do not wish Doctor to be a hypocrite, so I must call a spade and say that I am also equally guilty amongst those young people who are using social media in a negative form. But of course, Jonas, you need to understand that we live in a social environment. So, Doctor, once you throw a stone, you should be ready when Armando picks up the stone to retaliate. When you say something mean about the political party that is my political home, you must be ready for me to retaliate. So it is in that sense, Jonas. But you need to understand that there's a precedent that has been laid by our senior politicians, those that are our seniors in our political parties. I'm very fortunate, Doctor, that I always say that I watch Parliament throughout all sittings. So I see that the precedents that our leaders are portraying in Parliament when they are showing hate to each other is not the reality on the ground. But Jonas, these things are detrimental, because the layman on the ground, once he sees political party A and political party B having hostility and throwing words to each other, Armando as a layman, once he gets his phone, goes onto WhatsApp and starts insulting the political leader of the other party.
Because it's given permission, so to say.
Yes, because that's the precedents that our leaders have portrayed. They are portrayed that they are enemies while it is not such. And that is very wrong, Jonas. And I think our leaders need to change on that. They need to show us that once they have radical political discourse, it is to it. It is around that policy that they are discussing. It is around that subject matter, and not laying such precedents to us. Because right now what is happening is that we as young people are inheriting our political leaders' hatred for each other, which they have portrayed. So it is your president is this, your president is that, and it goes on as such. And we are moving away from the focus area, Jonas, because politics is about policy. It is about governance. And as young people, when we are on these WhatsApp platforms, we are talking about who's not taking care of their child, while it is supposed to be about who's not carrying out this policy. So the narrative is changing. So we as young people right now, Jonas, that is the thing. It is a president that has been laid. And again, if it's not a president, it is because we as young people, just as Namibian young people, I must also scold my constituents when I get a chance to, Jonas. We as Namibian young people do not want to have discussions that we need to have. We don't want to have policy discussions. We want to have discussions around which party is what, which party is that. That will not build the country that we want, unfortunately. What will build this country is governance. What will build these countries when we have discourse around policies that are to impact the growth of this country. So I think social media is a very positive tool, which I have also used in the past to gain a lot of network in the political space, to gain a lot of network in the social space, in the activism space. But it is to us as young people, and it is to an individual's discretion on how you utilize this tool. But again, when we are using this tool, because it is very good to use social media to promote our parties, to promote our presidential candidates, it is very good, but how do you do it? And when you are doing it, ask yourself, am I ready for how the next person will retaliate, us especially as young people?
Right. I want us to focus on the word radicalism. I mean, I think it's a word that we commonly throw around. Yeah, I'm a radical. But does radical mean being rude? Does radical mean being ungovernable.
Yes.
I mean, Malcolm X, for example, was considered a radical. That the manner in which he conducted himself, the manner in which he spoke, was so eloquent, was so beautifully put together. But yet he was labeled a radical. But now, when you say someone's a radical, it's about
anarchy, chaos.
Very
Talk to us about that. What is radicalism mean? Mahatma Gandhi was a peaceful man.
Yeah.
They also called him a radical.
Well, I don't know, maybe you can ask the radicals that are around and maybe they can tell you what that means. But I think, to me, I mean, if you, for example, think about people like Malcolm X, they stood for something and they defended what they stood for passionately while, accepting views of others. So I don't think that it should bring about, chaos and stuff. And perhaps if I can go back to what my brother said about the issue of throwing stones, for example, that metaphor, and, he said, if you are throwing stones, you must be ready for retaliation. Yeah. And I would say, an eye for an eye leaves everyone blind. So I think tolerance, at the very basic level, also start with saying, okay, this is how mistaken another person is about me. But I will not hurl insults at that person as a way of getting even. Yeah. So I think we always need people with cool heads. Yeah. And people in positions of leadership are very important to this whole phenomenon of tolerance. And the parliamentarians, how they conduct themselves, because these are people who the ordinary folks look up to. And if they do not conduct themselves in a manner that is
honorable,
respectful, honorable, then what happens to those who follow them? But again, also as young people or as followers, we shouldn't just follow for the sake of following. And I think this is where the issue of being well-informed and enlightened become very important to the whole issue of tolerance and also democracy. Because it is, when you are ignorant and when you are prejudiced that you fall for all kind of propaganda. I mean, I was the other day looking at this fake letter that was circulating that purported to say some members of the House of Commons in England are behind Dr. Itula. If you have something between your ears, if you just scan the content of that document, you could get a sense that it is potentially fake or it is a hoax. But then people just keep on circulating this. So, and sometimes it becomes very unfortunate when it is the most enlightened amongst us who can't differentiate between fact and fiction. And, if you enlighten yourself properly, you can easily have an eye to pick propaganda. So, and it goes also to issues of written manifestos of political parties to even differentiate as to, okay, if someone says they will do A, B, and C in a short period of time, and these are the numbers that they put out there, and then, you go to your village, you are also explaining this to your, to those who are probably less fortunate in terms of being enlightened, and you are saying, this is what the party is going to, and that's how misinformation, kind of gets propagated. Yeah.
Amount of peer pressure was a word that I always thought was associated with teenagers, but then you grow up and you realize this peer pressure, stays with us until, I don't know at what age, but even so some of us who are approaching our 40s, there is still peer pressure. But talk to us about the peer pressure that you face as, and as far as your constituency is concerned, as, as young people. What are the conversations like when somebody openly says, well, I'm supporting this party because of A, B, C, and D, and somebody replies this and says, what, have you lost your mind? Why would you want to do that? Do you think the youth, you spoke about the youth being politically woke, but are they politically mature enough to have these conversations without hurling insults or without sitting down, like the doc said over there, that, to compare manifestos and say, well, yeah, you might be onto something. Have healthy, debates about, the current political situation and still walk away, shake hands and say, okay, well, all the best, come the 27th, without having any personal vendettas later on.
No, thank you, Jonas, for that. But before I give you my 2 cents on that, I'd quickly like to just give you 1 cent on the radicalism aspect that you had thrown to Doctor. And I'd really love to say, look, Jonas, we as young people need to start asking ourselves when we are practicing our radicalism. When is the healthy time, Doctor, to practice our radicalism? Our leaders we elect into office for 5 years. When is the right time to practice radicalism? Is it in the 5th year when we are to have elections again? When our sovereignty is fragile? When our democracy is fragile? When everybody is on edge? Do you think, Jonas, that is the right time for us as young people to practice our radicalism? Well, as far as I, Armando Peters, am concerned, I will not be practicing radicalism in an election year, because this is the time that we are sealing our political parties to go into parliament, to go into office. Our political parties ought to already be campaigning throughout the first year that they go into office. So
but don't you think radicalism can be practiced through the power of the ballot?
Yes, that's the point that I'm coming to, Jonas. So I am saying I will be practicing my radicalism on the ballot during an election year. I will not be practicing my radicalism during campaigns. I will not be throwing a stone to another political party during campaigns, but rather I practice my radicalism when I demand accountability from a municipal council. I practice radicalism when I demand accountability from an education minister. I demand radicalism from a minister of health throughout the 4 years before the election period. And then I know when I am going to practice how I'm going to practice my radicalism in an election year, by the ballot, by removing whoever I feel is not capable of office. That is how you are supposed to practice radicalism in an election year, because this is a fragile time for democracy. So radicalism is indeed good, because it has our leaders on their toes, but you cannot practice radicalism during an election year while the state functions are fragile. That will be my advice to my constituents. But coming down to your question, Jonas.
Peer pressure,
Yes, peer pressure. Jonas, I always say that, Doctor, and I think I've alluded to it now too, and I said that Namibian young people have become politically woke, but Jonas, I did not say that they're politically mature. Indeed, we have a lot of Namibian youth who are politically active, Doctor, but very politically immature. I have been fortunate enough to have friends from the other side of the aisles politically, and I am on this side of the aisles, but in the end, we have political discourse. I tell them that, look, what you are saying is wrong, and how you said it is wrong, and my colleagues from the other side of the aisles will bring a policy document to me, Doctor, because they have been exposed so much, and they will say, this policy cannot work because this is the grounds that it will not work on. And we have truthful political discourse. We tell each other that I do not think that your political party is capable of carrying out that because of point A, B, C, but on ground and on merit and in respect, because we know that what we are fighting for is the interest of the Namibian House. We are not fighting for the egos of our political party representatives. But again, for the layman on the ground, it gets dirty, I tell you, Jonas. Once you go into the community and you go out campaigning, because these people, and it goes down again, Jonas, to civic education for our people, and telling them that, look, we in a social context will have opposing views, but how do we walk around this? How do we tell each other that this is wrong and this is right? But again, for the Namibian youth that are average, political discourse is telling me who is corrupt and who is not. Is that really political discourse?
Yeah. In this day and age when people can afford lawyers, it's good to say allegedly.
Yes, allegedly.
But nonetheless, Doc, let me move over to you and talk to us about cultural dimensions. Namibia is obviously very rich in terms of our cultural diversity. How much of an influence is that in terms of how we tolerate each other politically? And does politics, in a way, tie to where we come from in terms of the language that we speak or the regions that we come from? And how does it speak to the very famous phrase that we always use, one Namibia, one nation?
Yeah, or unity in diversity.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think politics in Namibia is still very much organized around ethnicity. Unfortunately, we can't run away from that. You have specific political parties whose constituency is X or Y.
Yeah.
And that's that. And I think probably at some point it becomes counterproductive in the sense that it can't be that simply because I hail from Okakarara and in that area, Nuto is the dominant party. So I would have to vote for Nuto whatever happens, even if what they are offering is doesn't speak to what I want as a person. So, but generally I think the ethnicity issue is actually slowly retreating. Over time now, you realize that there are young people who do not have those kind of baggages, who say, I will align with that political party because it speaks to my aspirations as a young person. But generally, I think we are no longer at a point where, for example, a particular region is a no-go zone for X political party. But you remember some time back, for those of us who are old enough, who were born way before independence.
The two of us, yeah.
You realize that there were some elections some time back where you would hear things such as, this is a no-go zone for a particular political party, or this tree belongs to a particular political party. I mean, just imagine if whoever created that tree hears such a thing. I mean, the tree that was, made for everyone to rest under, now it belongs to a political party. So I think we have made tremendous progress.
Yeah.
So I don't think really that when it comes to what I would call political culture, that where we come from now determines how we conduct ourselves in terms of, say, people from that particular region or of that political party are violent.
Yeah.
I don't think that we can say that with any degree of confidence.
Right.
So,
gentlemen, let's quickly go for a break and then we'll continue after that. Just tuning in, you're watching Situation Critical, and after the break, we'll also allow for phone calls and, of course, continue with the discussion, which is focusing on tolerance during election time. Stay tuned. Three, 417. 34. Welcome back. If you're just tuning in, you're watching Situation Critical, and the topic is all about political tolerance during times of elections. And if you'd like to contribute to the ongoing discussion, you can give us a call on 061-291-3417. That's 061-291-3417. And please remember just to keep your comments very, very brief in the interest of the limited time that we have. Leadership. I'd like to get, you spoke about leadership, Armando, and how important it is, for them to set the tone. How would you gauge, leadership across the board in terms of, the manner in which, they interact, with one another on a scale of 1 to 10? Let's say you do watch Parliament, and you sometimes sit there and think like, come on, man, guys, you're supposed to do better than this. And do they perhaps not realize that their behavior kind of like, cascades down, like you earlier on said, to the everyday man and woman who feel like, well, since Dr. Shirera said it and he's my political leader, I might as well do it as well?
Thank you ever so much for that question, Jonas. And I think leadership really plays an important role in our very social political discourse as we interact. And let me use a very classical example. You know, Jonas, my very good friend, very close to me, is on the other aisles of the political landscape, and I'm on this side of the political landscape. And being very close friends, we engage in political discourse, him also being a committed viewer of the parliament sittings of the Republic of Namibia. And many a times, Jonas, in as much as it might sound like a joke, our friendship is put to the test because of what our leaders portray to us there in Parliament, because his leaders that are on the other side of the aisles say something contrary, and my leaders on this side say something else that is contrary to what the others are saying. And when we are on a phone call later on unpacking the parliamentary sitting, there's a hostility between the two of us because we agree to disagree. We don't agree to disagree because we are both trying to put out our point, and we are saying that your leader was wrong when he said this, and I say, but your leader was the one who started it. So our leaders need to know, Jonas, that the precedents that they are laying in Parliament has detrimental repercussions on the ground here. For them, it might seem like they are promoting their political parties. They are making their political parties look good. And it brings me to this point again on political discourse, Jonas, that everyone is always talking about national interest, and they are saying that I'm pushing the agenda of the Namibian House, I'm pushing the agenda of the Namibian people. But it is very uncommon, Jonas, that we see tolerance amongst our national leaders too. Tolerance in the instance of national policy, tolerance in the instance of national decision making. What do I mean by this, Jonas, Doctor? I mean, if our leaders could practice political tolerance in Parliament, when a motion comes from the opposite side of the aisles, it's coming to this side and there's something wrong, the people on this side of the aisles should take that is coming from the other side of the aisles, just scrutinize it, bring it back and propose and say, why don't we follow this route instead of just shutting it down? That means that we cannot coexist as different political parties because each person is trying to push their agenda. But so how do we then coexist, and how do we tolerate each other if our national leaders cannot tolerate what the other party is bringing, because it will make the other party look good and the other look bad, but the repercussions are felt by us on the ground?
Look, Shalena, what are your thoughts around that, and what is your impression on the quality of debate in the August House in as far as leaders are concerned?
Yeah, I must first admit that I don't watch TV.
Yeah.
So I don't watch the parliamentary proceedings at all. But of course I do read about what is said in Parliament. And I think if I have to rate, because you ask from 1 to 10, I think I'll probably give them a 6. And that is to say that I think they can do better. Because you realize that sometimes the disagreements that people have over a particular motion that is before Parliament is not informed by the national interest or what that particular motion would do to the Namibian House, to use my brother's phrase.
Let me just understand we have a caller on the line from Katima Mulilo, Shukmansburg to be particular. Charles, very good evening. Thank you so much for joining us. Good evening, Charles. Can you hear me? Charles? I think it's challenged technologically, but sorry for derailing your train of thought there, Doc. Please do continue.
Yeah, no worries. So I think it's probably the rain. Yeah, the rain is intolerant of communication. So what I was saying is that sometimes you realize that disagreements are not around the content of what is being discussed at times. It's just simply because the motion has been brought by a member of Parliament who doesn't belong to a political party. And that's how intolerance actually starts. Simply because that person doesn't belong to your political party. Whatever that person says becomes nonsense. Because, you just think like, if it is not my political party, then...
Does that make sense?
So from the onset, before they even state their case, you've already...
Political lines.
And sometimes you hear this, people are just disrupting for the sake of disruption. Business is trying to motivate emotion, and then you hear, like, I mean, sometimes it, actually, sometimes I think I do watch remotely through, cell phones and stuff. Yeah, not on TV, and you realize that sometimes the house degenerates into a kindergarten, for lack of a better phrasing. And I think that's very unfortunate. So I think as political leaders, we can really do better. And sometimes we have to put aside our differences, because that's what democracy is about, actually. It's about contestation of ideas. And it's not about you, I mean, how do I put this? Like, say, condemning whatever it is that I'm saying simply because I don't belong to a political party. So democracy can only thrive if we accept difference and also sometimes say, okay, but let's look at the facts. I think on this point, my brother here has a point.
You hold ground.
So let's see how we can perfect this for the greater good of the nation.
Absolutely. I understand Charles is back on the line. Very good evening to you, Charles. Thank you so much for joining us.
How are you? Good evening, how are you?
Hello, Charles, can you hear me?
Yes, good evening, how are you?
I'm doing fine. Apologies for saying that you were from Katima. I understand you are from Shukmansberg, and those are two different things.
Excuse me?
Please do share your thoughts.
Oh, thank you. I really enjoyed the discussion, and the panelists you have, they're quite live and very educated. Thank you for collecting them, and it's really quite enlightening. Now, my thoughts are, in Namibia, I do believe there's political tolerance towards each other, more especially during campaigns and after campaigns. And I have to thank those who were born before us for laying the foundation to be where we are today. Compared to other African countries, elections, the time of other people losing their lives, other people losing their assets, other people losing their properties. But in Namibia, those cases are rare. Yes, we might have divergent views at some particular time and situation, but it's not really something that we can say there's no political tolerance in Namibia. Those are isolated cases which happens. So in a nutshell, I really think the spirit and the harmony that prevails in Namibia during the critical time of our elections and also other times where our democracy is being tested. We always find each other. We always find a common ground of moving forward in unison. That's the spirit that we need to keep on moving on for us to demonstrate the maturity of our country, sovereignty of our country, and the maturity, the level of understanding each other. So in short, that's what I wanted to say, that we are better off compared to other countries, but we can still do better to a extent level. But for now, thank you to Mr. Peters and Dr. Elson. I'm really enjoying the discussion, and let me go back to my TV and listen to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Charles. Highly appreciate it. Charles, all the way from Shukmansberg, that's in the Zambezi region, sharing his thoughts and just also saying, look, we have a lot to be thankful for compared to other countries, not only in Africa, because we're trying to get away from this thinking that everything politically negative only happens on the continent. There are countries in East Europe that are much more worse off in terms of how democracies are thriving there. Inclusivity, Armando. For the very longest time, young people felt that they were being spoken about but not being spoken to. How has it changed over the years? And for a young person who is clearly politically active, how would you describe the evolution, and what has encouraged young people to be now, to speak up now in political movements and share their views and opinions and really feel that, wow, they're finally now listening to us?
Yes. Thank you, Jonas. Before I get to that one again, I'd just like to quickly add fuel to what Charles has alluded to. And I'd really love to thank the political systems that we have in our country, because, Doctor, you would agree with me that politics in its definition too refers to regulating human behavior and how we engage as human beings. And it just comes to show that if Charles can say that we are better off than other countries, then our systems indeed are working. So I'd really like to say kudos to the Namibian Namibian political systems. But coming down to inclusion, Charles, you know, Doctor, I was saying earlier on that you and I were both born before independence, but I will be going to the polls for the first time this in my life ever. So, and I am excited that I will be going to the polls for the first time in my life at a time, Jonas, where we are having 22-year-olds is nominated on their political party list by their political party representatives, where we are having 21-year-olds on political party listed vying for parliament. And not only that, Jonas, too, I am seeing that many political parties are now having young spokespersons. I am seeing that young people are not, because you know, Jonas, my problem was not with only including young people in political process. My problem was, Doctor, with having young people drive the amplification of the agenda of the youth themselves, not just putting them there for ceremonial purposes as it has been for the past years, being told how to do it, being told what to say. But right now the dynamic is changing, and it is now, once President Buhamba said, Jonas, that young people will one day stand up and young people will start taking up charge, and today his words are materializing. Young people are taking charge, and now they are given an opportunity to go out and to represent their own interests. So inclusion, as far as my constituents are concerned, of course, you need to understand, Jonas, that inclusion is not only when young people go to parliament. Inclusion is when young people are in the structures of their political parties, when young people are advising their seniors, and the seniors are taking what they are saying to word. And not only the youth, Jonas, we need to remember that we also have marginalized communities. Absolutely. We have those that are in the very far region of Tumkwe. Once I traveled to Tumkwe, and Doctor, as we were traveling, we were going through Roedag, Omatake, those little areas where the marginalized communities are. And I'm sitting here, Doctor, and I'm asking myself, I am saying that inclusion is happening, but are those people at Roedag, in Tumkwe, do they know that elections will be happening? Is there a polling station perhaps there for them? Do they get civic education? The young people in Beersheba in the south, the young people deep in the north, very deep. I'm not talking about Ongwediva, Jonas, but very deep, those that cannot be reached because of the lack of demand for development and roads to get them there. Do they know that there's a democratic process that they need to be part of on the 27th, come next week, Wednesday? Are they going to be included? It leaves a question mark for me, because just last week I was reading that some marginalized communities feel that they are left out, and we are just a week ahead of elections.
Yeah. Doc, what do you think has happened over the years? And for a very long time, being an African country, of course, we also try to put our African traditions and customs into something that is extremely Western. You know, democracy was a Greek concept. It came from Greece. And now, like in African culture, in most instances, when an older person is defeated, they start using, you can't talk to me like that. Yeah. You are a small boy. Yeah. But it has now changed, isn't it? In terms of, what do you think has changed in terms of older people understanding that, look, these young people are onto something. We have to include them. If we're saying that they are the future, but we're not including them in the processes and the decision-making positions, what has changed over the years? What has, caused that, let's say, that epiphany to say, well, we have to stop this. I'm older than you. You can't talk to me like that. But even though the young person might be coming across as, with a very valid point, what do you think has transpired in our society?
I think for quite some time we had what I would say some form of intergenerational difference or intergenerational intolerance, in the sense that, of course, you have got this, big African man, a patriarch who should be where the buck stops. And I think, of course, things have changed over time. The crude demographics of the eligible voters has changed drastically over time. So the old folks no longer have a choice. So, but at the same time, I think I would like to caution that we shouldn't allow tokenism to take precedence over genuine inclusion. Because this thing of, say, you put, young person in, among the members that you nominate for, I don't know, Parliament or whatever it is, and then you realize that you have got this thing of young people somewhat being beholden to these, old political leaders, in the sense that
I feel like they're indebted.
Yeah, you are indebted. It shouldn't be like that.
Yeah.
In fact, if you are chosen, probably that political leader should have seen something in you.
Yeah.
So you deserve to be at the table.
Yeah.
So I think young people shouldn't allow themselves to be used. If the old establishment has realized that we have gotten to a point where the statistics are no longer for us.
Also the challenges, Doctor.
Yeah, so you have got a situation where NSA and ECN, we're talking about, 70% of the people who are eligible to vote being the young folks. So they become the integral part of what would decide the fate of the election. So you realize that the older folks no longer have any choice. So that's where we are in terms of, it's like we are now at a crossroad. Yeah. So I don't think that there is anything particularly that has changed in terms of the old folks looking down on the young ones to say, you people are not fit to lead, you are not ready to lead. Because you realize that there are instances where the old folks reproduce themselves through those through those young people that they put out there as leaders.
Yes.
So you realize that all of a sudden, a young person is now saying, the government of the day is the best we ever had. Let's not, be ungrateful compared to other countries. And when we come to that issue of, like, we are better off compared to other countries, I find that reasoning a bit intellectually vacuous, in the sense that when we say we want A, B, and C, what we are saying is that we can do better than where we are at the moment. So the moment you start telling me, no, you young people take peace and stability that we have in this country for granted, look what is happening in Mozambique, look what is happening where those countries are on fire, we're like, yes, we understand that. But what we are saying is that we can do better.
Absolutely.
That's all.
Yeah.
So it's not taking things for granted. It's like we can do better. So we as young people, and I would like to think that I'm still young, cannot be blackmailed by that rhetoric of always like, you guys are not grateful for what is happening in Namibia. Like, people don't have the basic necessities of life. And you are telling me about peace and stability, while I struggle to have access to, ablution facilities. So I think that nonsense got to stop.
I'd want to get your thoughts in as far as intergenerational discourse is concerned. I mean, we talk about, political tolerance as if it's an abstract thing, but then it comes into homes.
Yes.
We had situations in the past, you would know, that, when political parties broke away, certain individuals broke away from the main party, formed up, opposition parties. There was violence in homes. People were being put out of their homes. People would not talk to each other. Brothers and sisters would cut each other off because you're having a completely different political perspective. How dare you? What is the conversation now, Armando, in terms of that intergenerational discourse of saying, look, Mom, Dad, understand that is the party that you identify with, but times have changed, and I think that I'm more inclined to be with party A rather than the party that I grew up with, and still have that, assurance that they will love you unconditionally because you're still their child. But when it comes on a household level, have we reached that political maturity where you go to your party's rally, and I also go to my party's rally, and we come back together in one house.
And we are family.
I'm like, that was
And we have a debrief.
Thank
you, Jonas, for that one. And I would really like to thank Doctor for such a well-elaborated, educated breakdown on that. And I'd really also like to quickly give my 2 cents in terms of as far as national leadership is concerned, and who deserves or who is more fitted competed right now to go into leadership in terms of demographic and who needs to give the other one an opportunity. And I'd like to really toe it down to my personal perspective. And I may be wrong, Jonas, but this is my personal view as Armando Peters. And mine is the interest of the state. Mine is the interest of the people. So as far as I am concerned, Doctor, I do not care who becomes a leader, because for me it is who is going to drive the national agenda, who is going to bring the people their basic services, who is going to give our people their dignity. Because Jonas, I will always say this, you can be young. No, you can actually be old and incompetent and incapable. And you can be young, Doctor, and easily corrupted. So to me, it is not who becomes who becomes leader. It is who has the national interest at heart. It is not who is young and who is old, because both have shortcomings. So to me, it is who has the Namibian nation at heart, Doctor. In as far as demographics speak, we know what comes with young people. We know what comes with the old folks.
Unfortunately, our time is running out, but I'd like to give you just 30 seconds each to just what message would you like to send to voters regarding what we've discussed as we fast approach the election day, November 27th? Just briefly, what is your message?
Well, first I would just say for those who have registered, they must turn up at the polls, because what we have seen over the last couple of years, or if previous elections are anything to go by, we have got this euphoria of, people are excited about elections, they go and register, and then they don't turn up. And then that becomes a travesty to democracy. So, but ultimately, I think we should agree to disagree, leave away issues around, name calling and stuff. Yeah. They are not productive for, the country or for a democracy. And yeah, let's have some mutual respect and understanding.
Yeah,
yes,
briefly,
I'll be very brief, Jonas. Yeah. Mine to the Namibian nation is that it is a critical time. As I said earlier on, Doctor, our democracy is fragile, our systems are fragile. Therefore, I would like to urge the Namibian nation to go out and vote, to have faith in the institution, the Namibian Electoral Commission, which is entrusted with the process of our elections, and to go out and vote. And let's go out and vote and let the best player win once the results come out. And after about that, when the clock goes at 12 on the 26th, let us put down all our weapons and go out and practice our radicalism on the ballot. And after that, ensure that Namibia comes out united, because this country is bigger than any political party. This country is bigger than any ideology. And of course, this country is bigger than the ego of any politician.
All right, thank you so much. Dr. Chirera, Armando, thank you so much for your time. And I appreciate the energy that you have brought. Reminds me of, you spoke with so much conviction and energy. Reminded me of a Southern Baptist preacher that I used to watch on TV back in the days. But thank you so much once again. Now, before we go, we always have a quick African proverb, and today's proverb goes as follows. Before you destroy a bridge, make sure you can swim. So before making irreversible decisions, understand their purpose and potential consequences. Impulsive actions often lead to regret, and unforeseen challenges arise. A bridge you discard today might be essential tomorrow, so always think ahead and act with foresight. With that said, remember the tagline, situation critical, minds philosophical. Peace and love.